Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our show. This is your host, Keith Doherty. Today our special guest is top real estate agent David Kramer of Hilton Hyland, based out of Beverly Hills, California. David is a real estate agent unlike any other when it comes to buying and selling luxury properties in the Los Angeles and Beverly Hills areas. With over 20 years of experience in representing buyers and sellers of high-end estates throughout the area, he has the skills and knowledge to obtain the results his clients are looking for while maintaining the highest standards of integrity, confidentiality, and professionalism. All right, with all that said, David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Keith.
David, if we could start with, what led you into real estate? Was it something that you always knew you wanted to do, or did you maybe stumble into it?
Well, I'd always enjoyed real estate, and when I was young, my mom used to take me looking for homes, although that's not what did it for me. I was in school, in business school, and I was an economics major, and did not know what I was going to do, and then became friends with someone whose father owned a boutique firm in Beverly Hills, and we used to hang out, and at one point he said, why don't you consider getting into real estate? And I met with his dad, and it clicked at that point, and I was halfway through school and decided without any question this is what I wanted to do, and so I kept my emphasis in economics but geared my studies towards real estate. So started taking real estate classes, law, and I was excited from that moment on.
Excellent. And could you talk a little bit about what personal attributes, traits, or qualities you think have most contributed to the success you've had in real estate?
So I know the answers that I hear all the time because I meet with people who want to get in the business. I like real estate. I love people. I love everything. And those are all really fine qualities to have, but they're not going to make a career. What you really need is, for me personally, I would say it's just being able to understand where people are coming from and empathize with them. And what I mean by that is if someone's, it's emotional. So if someone's been living in a home for a long time, you need to understand where they're coming from and be able to understand why they make certain decisions. And it's the same thing for the other side, for the buyer. It allows you to connect people to make a deal. So it's not just always about a number. That's important to a lot of people, but sometimes it's why. So you can make a living in real estate, but if you really want to be very successful, it's about getting both sides to a common point. And to do that, you really need to understand where people are coming from. And so I think that's important. I hate to say it, but therapy. A lot of times you're somewhat of a therapist. So I think that is the difference between having a living in real estate and becoming very successful.
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make there, and I think it might, spill over into other industries as well, as just, that relationship to really, like you said, to be able to, empathize and to understand where people are coming from, why they're feeling a certain way, what they're really looking for, because I think a lot of times people will express things, but it might not be exactly what they mean. So for you to be able to kind of translate, like you said, and understand that, and then, like you said, have the other side come into it and be able to marry those two together so that you can have a seamless transaction.
Yeah, I will often ask people, I'll say, what is your ultimate goal? And usually the answer is, I want the most money I can get. But I go, besides money, like what's going to make you happy? And a lot of times I'll ask the buyer, even if it's not my client, the same question, what are your needs? What are your specific needs? And sometimes they align, and you wouldn't even think they would. A lot of examples, I do a fair amount of trust properties. So someone's passed on, and you don't necessarily know why people are doing certain things, as you just said. So there's things that can make them happy to get a deal done that you wouldn't normally expect to do. And the other thing is, be flexible. People look at deals as, I write an offer, I put in my deposit, we have a certain period of escrow, and then we close, and that's it. And really ask your client a lot of questions, like, will you carry? Would you do a lease back? Would you do certain things? And you can assemble a deal using untraditional methods that you wouldn't normally be able to do. If they're apart in price, you can create a second trust deed at a very low interest rate for a few years, and that will give your seller what they want and perhaps the buyer what they want as well. Just be open to all options. And I get a lot of pushback oftentimes. I represent mostly sellers, and I get a lot of pushback from my own clients who get upset and say, are you asking me to carry? I don't want to carry. And not. What I'm trying to find out is what are you open to that might allow me to be a little more flexible in making a deal that is a little untraditional so I can make you happy in the long run and put something together. Another thing is you're not the buyer. So, when you're the agent, you're the agent. So don't get emotionally wrapped up in this deal. And that's really kind of the purpose of a broker, is for an unemotional party who's a professional to guide our clients, not to say they'll never do that or that's ridiculous. I mean, we are not the client. We are the broker. So act like the broker.
That's all great advice, and I think it's important because you're pointing out things that a lot of people don't consider. And I like where you do. You have a box where they tell you, okay, here's how it normally works, right? You get the offer, you put it, like you said, that's the standard. But I like where you think is, hey, let me talk to my seller ahead of time and get a feel for what they really want, where their flexibilities might be. Because like you said, a deal could be going the wrong way, but you can say, oh, well, I know that they're willing to hold. And then, there you go, you turn it around, you get them what they want at the end of the day. Maybe it takes a little longer for the money to get to them, but at least they get what they want, yet you put the buyer in, everybody's happy, and you solve the problem. But it wasn't conventional. It was outside the box a little bit.
For example, a lot of times you'll ask a client, and they'll even be afraid to tell you sometimes, like, what works for you, and they may say, you know what, I want a 4 or 5 month escrow. And the answer would normally be no, except a lot of times, again, I've gone to the other party and I've said, what do you want in your ideal world? And they'll say, well, I'd really love a long escrow because we're going to be traveling and we won't be back till the end of summer. So normally that's a no. But how do I get it to be a yes? Release the deposit, and sometimes you can even go beyond the deposit. There's some legal things you need to cover to do that, but you can create a deal that works for both parties, just if you're open and flexible. Some of my best advice to new agents, you talk about success, is just don't talk so much. Just listen. And people will tell you what you need to know. And a lot of times brokers just do not stop talking when people are in a house. And I think they don't allow the buyer to get in the right headspace to enjoy the house, because they want to know what it's like to live there. And if you're talking about what walls you can pull down and what's wrong with the house, you're not going to allow that process to occur. And it's important. You want to hear what they have to say and respond rather than tell them where they need to go.
Excellent advice. And I think you covered some examples there in some situations, but do you think you'd give our listeners another example of when your traits have played a role in your path towards success?
Well, I have an interesting one. I had a house in Beverly Hills, very, very high-end, large home, and it was across from a church. And when I got the listing, the owner said, I need to let you know now, it's across from a church. Every Sunday, it is packed on our street. It's hard to park. There's cars coming in and out, and you need to disclose that to everybody. And we know it's a hard thing to sell, but at least, we're telling you up front. And again, the way you phrase things and disclose things as not being a negative, not putting your own spin as a broker as to what is negative and what's positive. And we went through a lot of showings, and it took a while. Someone came in, and I said, I just need to let you know there's a church across the street, and on Sundays there's a fair amount of people here. And they said, we know, that's our church. We can never get parking. We can never get on the street, and we're so happy to be able to walk to church that we want this house. And they bought it, and they paid a really good price for the house. So by not putting my spin on it, by not even relaying the seller's spin on it, of it being negative because it's so crowded, I made a sale that I think wouldn't have happened. I had a similar situation in a place where I was selling condos, and there was one in the back that literally you had to have lights on all day. It was just so dark. The ultimate buyer is from Las Vegas. He works at night through, he's on the phone with Europe, and he's out and doing things. He likes to sleep during the day, so a dark unit was what he wanted. So by not thinking too much about the situation, not putting my negative spin on it, I made some sales that I don't think I would have made.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking in my mind. I'm like, man, unless you could find a churchgoer, but it worked out even better to find an actual, someone that goes to that church where it was like you said, it's their positive. But if you would have been negative about it, like, oh, you may not want this because there's a lot of church people and it's flood. They were like, well, that's our church. You insulted us now. That's our church.
Or they would have sensed the negativity and known they could have negotiated harder.
So obviously, David, when with all success, I think there comes some trials and adversities as you're on your road and your path to get there. So can you talk a little bit about some of the adversities or trials that you had to overcome in order to achieve your goals?
Sure. The first thing is I did grow up in LA, so I have a home court advantage of knowing the city pretty well. What I didn't have was contacts. I didn't grow up in Beverly Hills. I didn't grow up around Beverly Hills at the time. And I knew, I don't know why, but in my head I said, the only place I will work is Beverly Hills. I want to deal with high-end properties. And so when I got into the business, I was a fish out of the water. I wasn't necessarily comfortable with people with money, and I didn't have contacts to call upon. I couldn't set lunches up with people who knew people. I just didn't have those contacts. So that was a little bit of a burden to get over. The other thing is, and I'll admit it, is I just had way too much ego when I was young. I was cocky. I thought, I'm going to hit it hard and work my ass off and kill it in this business, and nobody's going to get in my way. And the ambition part is wonderful. The ego part is not. And I finally started breaking into the high end and just kept getting shut down. And it was ego. I was probably talking too much. I wasn't listening enough. And I think what would have been smart for me at the time was to work under another agent as an assistant and learn the business better. And I didn't do that, and I should have. And I think ultimately I got to where I wanted to. It just took longer than it should have.
Excellent. And I guess, what keeps you going when you hit these obstacles along the way? Why don't you give up what's your driving force?
Well, there's that ambition. It was funny. I got into the business in '89 and did really well at the beginning. Small properties, but sold a bunch. I mean, I was knocking on doors, making phone calls, looking at hundreds of homes, doing everything I possibly could. And I started getting some traction and making some sales. And then we hit a recession, and it was a good one for real estate especially. And I got in debt and just got buried pretty fast. And the funny thing is I just wouldn't give up. I said, there's no other business for me. There's nothing else I want to do. I love what I do. I love this business, and I will be successful. And I just persevered. And at the time, got very lucky to land a bank foreclosure account and started selling foreclosures through banks and learning a little bit different of a way to do real estate, which was dealing with lawyers and kind of a more professional way, if you will. And that kind of really gave me a nice head start, got me some money at the time, and then I launched that into doing higher-end homes.
Excellent. And I guess kind of looking forward, what is your vision for your career and your business over the next 5 years?
Well, I'm always changing. I cannot sit still. I don't like static situations. So I am always looking for the next thing. I'm always looking to change what I do, be on the cutting edge of real estate, on marketing. So recently we've grown the team, and I'll continue to do that, basically have more people. I think the business is changing. It's getting more competitive by far. Much smarter people are getting into the business, and they're very ambitious. So, you have to change with it. So what I'm planning on doing is continuing to stay on the cutting edge of what I do, probably grow the team at some point by one more person, and that's it. I wouldn't say I'm looking for any major changes. Things are going well, and I will keep the pressure up. And then every year I have a really kind of interesting thing in December. I call it the No Sacred Cows month. And I kind of reevaluate everything. I look at the age of the computers. I look at my website. I look at what we're doing, what I'm doing, and then I reevaluate. And I'll say there's nothing that's off the table for change. I don't care what it is or how comfortable it makes me. But you have to reconsider your business. We're not in a business that is guaranteed from any standpoint. And you have to be innovative. You have to be on the cutting edge. You have to look forward. And if you don't, you're not going to survive. It's not the kind of business where you can be smart and good and do what you've always done and do well. You need to be ahead of the curve. And so I see right now, like, I'll go up against somebody that would have beaten the pants off me a few years ago in a listing appointment, and I'll get that listing now because I've changed and they haven't. So I think that's the most important thing, is just don't take anything for granted in this business. It is eat what you kill, and it's sales. So it's not going to be the same. You look at so many industries that have changed. Uber most recently obviously has just changed everything, messengers, food service, taxis. And so you need to be ahead of the curve in real estate as well.
Absolutely. I think it's great advice for everybody in any industry, but obviously especially real estate. Like I said, with things always changing, don't be in that closed box again when it comes to looking at your business and moving forward, because I mean, it seems like we had social media come about, Facebook and Twitter, and then it was kind of stagnant a little, and now it seems like every week Snapchat and Pinterest, and there's like a new application that comes out every a lot faster than they were coming out before. And certain people want to communicate on Facebook, some want to text, some want to call, some want to just, use Snapchat, so it's really a ever evolving industry.
Yeah, and you need to know that, and you need to know where it's coming from. If you deal with one population, then you need to tailor your marketing or your communication to that, that demographic. If you're in a different one, you need to do, if it's older, you need to be aware. And if they're younger, you need to be aware. You need to, it's not, again, it's just not the same business in every place. So it's important to really evaluate, understand, be on the cutting edge, innovate what you do. And the other thing is, I mean, it kind of goes to what I just said, but also gear that towards where you want to be. So for example, I don't do as many millennials. So my marketing needs to be a little bit more conservative, if you will. So, and I want to relay a certain vision because I deal with a lot of high-end properties and high-end clients. So they're going to look me up. Everybody does. And, I want to control what's online, what they see. I have people who come to my listings and say, can I take a video? And I go, no, you can't, because I have a video. And I spent thousands of dollars to create that video, and that's what I want online. I don't want your handheld camera video online representing my property. So, your message is very important.
Excellent. And I guess kind of on top of that, what do you feel is the best way that you market yourself as a real estate professional so that you can have continual growth?
For me, it is continuing my contacts, my networking. That's where a lot of my business comes from. So I constantly am on top of that. I have lunches 2-3 times a week. I go to events, charity events. Just a lot of networking is really important. And like I said, innovating is very important. The other thing, and you asked for continual growth, I'd like to phrase that to long-term continual growth. And that goes to people's reputation. I see people get in who are newer, and they just start killing it. But they're doing it on the backs of a lot of the other agents in the area. And it's important because your reputation is everything. It takes years to build and minutes to lose. And I've had people go after listings that I've had actively listed, and, they're not going to last. So if you want continual growth, if you want long-term growth, guard your reputation. And we all make mistakes. So if you do, admit it and make it right. And then the most important thing I'd say to remember is a past client is your best referral source. So make sure they're happy, follow up, and do the right thing by them when you do your transaction. And that's where you'll get most of your business long term. That will be your continual growth.
And David, I think when it comes to agents and real estate in general, I think the public sometimes has misconceptions or myths that they look at of what value that an agent really brings to the table and can do for them. So what do you think the biggest misconception or myth people have about working with a real estate agent?
Yeah, I mean, I hear it from agents who want to get in the business, and that is, I love people and I love homes and everyone loves me, so therefore I can do this. And I think it goes both ways. This is a profession. We deal with a lot of legal contracts, and then we deal with usually what is people's largest purchases in their lives. So I think as far as misconception, it's that we look at some properties, show it, and then we do our deal, and that's about it. And there really is a lot that we bring to the table if we do our jobs right. The knowledge of the area, comps, knowledge of construction, which I think is important if we're going to sell homes. Learn something about construction so you can be part of the inspections in the sense of, things to watch out for, things to help relay to people who've never dealt with buying or selling a home. And so the misconception is that our job is very easy and that we don't do much. And a good real estate agent is absolutely invaluable. which I think is why we still exist, because a lot of firms have gotten into the business to try to negate what we do, to try to do it online, and it really hasn't worked, which is interesting, because you would think with Zillow and Redfin and all of the companies out there that they could have done it. I mean, they have evaluations and they do it all, but it's the personal touch that we bring to the table, the professionalism, the knowledge, and everything else that we can wrap into that we do for our clients that really is very important.
Excellent. And let's say you get a call from a family member or a friend, they're in another state, and they want to sell their home. Now, obviously, with your experience and the amount of time you've been in the business, that you probably have contacts, and you might have a network, and you might be able to do a referral. But let's just say, take it from a general advice standpoint. What advice would you give them about selecting an agent that could best serve their needs? Like kind of like you talk about taking care of your clients. What would you tell them to look for?
Well, tying back to what I said earlier, is try to get a referral from people who live in the area that you know, who have had experiences with those agents. That's really important. If you can get some good referrals and people agree and say, that's a good agent, they really took care of me, I think that's your best method. If you don't have that, then I would say come up with a list of questions that you have for the agents, and then interview 3, which I hear all the time, which I think is true. You should interview a few people. Follow up. The one thing I find that's interesting is people will interview agents, but they won't necessarily fact check what they're saying. So do that. Look at their profile online. Look at how they present their properties, how they present themselves, and choose somebody that most identifies with what you want. Because the thing that I found most interesting about agents is we all do the same thing in a completely different way with a completely different background. But those who are successful all do it well. And it's quite fascinating. You have people who come from all walks of life, become agents, successful agents, and then you find that they've done it in such a different way. So your agent, you're going to live with them. Somebody told me it was kind of like marrying somebody, and you do. You're literally married to these people for a short period of time. You are in their lives. You are in their heads, in their emotions for the time you're either looking for a house or you're representing them. So choose somebody that you want to work with. The one thing I will say is don't hire a best friend. Everyone does that, or I would say everyone, but people do that a lot. Hire someone who is a professional, who you respect and you'll listen to. It's very important to trust the advice your agent gives you. If you're choosing somebody who's a best friend who you can hang out with, who you feel will listen to you, that's not your agent. Your agent is somebody who you will respect and listen to. And when they tell you this is a good offer or you need to do this is in your best interests, you'll respect that decision and that answer.
Excellent advice. Now, David, obviously you're based out of the Beverly Hills, California area. What specific area do you cover from a real estate service standpoint if somebody did need assistance?
Well, I mean, like I said, we have a nice little team here. So we cover Los Angeles and we do parts of the San Fernando Valley. What's interesting is I have one agent who knows Malibu backwards and forwards, and I have somebody else who knows Manhattan Beach backwards and forwards. And so that's generally where we cover. But what I will say, and this is just when you get going, is we're a marketing firm at this point. So we cover a lot of area. I've got listings in Mexico. I've sold in San Diego. I have something in Mammoth right now. That's not really where I'm wanting to focus, but we've partnered with other agents and we've become the marketing arm for them, but primarily Los Angeles, to answer your question.
So if somebody needs services in one of those areas that you do handle, what's the best way somebody can find out more about you and how you can help them?
If you just do a search of my name, David Kramer, I will hopefully come up first. That's what I'm working on.
Yes, that's always a good thing. If people type your name in, that you're going to show up, at least in the first page of results.
Yeah.
So obviously, David, we want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come here today and share all your professional real estate experience with all of our listeners. And if you're listening and you want to learn more about David, you can obviously Google him, like you said. Also below this interview, we'll have a link to a website or any other contact information that we have for him, so you can go ahead and get in contact with him. So with all that said, everybody, until our next show, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Keith.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.